Hello everyone, welcome back to League of Legends DFS Esports Breakdown for July the 30th. Getting this video out a little late, so apologies that it's going to feel a little rushed and that kind of stuff, but hope you guys can understand. We will jump straight into skipping the recap and looking ahead to tomorrow. So pretty interesting 4-gamer, especially over in the LCK. We have about 3 pick'ems, and then EDG is a pretty sizable favorite against RA. So should be a pretty fun one to break down and look ahead to. We can kind of go over the EDG RA one. EDG are going back to Junjia, or I believe it's Junjia. In the jungle, I don't think JJ was that bad, so this is a little bit surprising that they're going to continue to try this jungle experiment out. It definitely felt like it was a lot more on Mako and Flandre having kind of downturns. I don't think JJ was having that many problems, but I guess they're feeling a little bit better with Junjie. I don't think it matters in this instance. At this point, I legitimately think RA are the worst team in the league. I would favor WE and LGD and TT. I don't know, all those other like bad teams. As TT's not in that category anymore, but I would favor every team pretty much over RA at this point. So I do think this is going to be pretty heavily one-sided in the EDG favor. If we do look over towards the numbers, we could see this is one of the more premier games. It is a couple kills over in terms of what an expected total would be over the rest, and I do think EDG is going to be very popular. But I'm going to be getting to them pretty much 100%. I don't think there's any reason not to. It makes sense. They should have an easy path to a 2-0 here, although they are starting on the red side. But I think they should be fine to win game 1, take it to game 2, and have a comfortable blue side victory. So I have EDG with the 2-0 here. Don't want to spend too much time about it. I just think RA, it really is that bad. I would specifically love to try and get as much Viper captain as possible. Again, we've seen iBoy have extremely bad games in the past, so we could definitely look to see some a good amount of bot lane action from Junjia, Viper, and Mako. Those would be my ideal targets, but again, it's not like you're getting any ownership discounts anywhere on this EDG team. The next one up over in the LPL is RNG versus JDG. Pretty exciting matchup. This one is obviously a battle at the top of the table. 2 teams who have already qualified for playoffs. We have JDG at 12-1, RNG at 9-2. RNG have a lot of matches left to play. But I mean, they've been playing extremely well in their own right. I do think they are kind of coming online, similar to how we've seen them do last split. They looked a little shaky early on, dropping some games. Although still winning the series, but at the end of the day, all they've lost to is Top Esports and V5, and even you could argue it's been a good 3 or 4 weeks maybe now that we've seen as a difference from when they even played against Top Esports. I do think they have improved since then. I do think they are becoming a little bit stronger. Obviously, we know Gala. He is probably the best AD carry in the world. I think there's a legitimate argument that he is playing as the best player in the world at the moment. So I do favor RNG in this one. And I'm honestly a little bit surprised the odds do not reflect that. I think JDG have been playing kind of a little bit by the skin of their teeth. I do think it is heavily dictated by the 2-0 that we saw from V5 in their last game. And I don't want to go too much off on a different tangent here, but I don't think V5 is quite as strong as we are making them out to be. I again do think they are a very, very strong team, and this is coming from somebody who just like a couple weeks ago, I said V5 was probably the favorite to win Worlds. I don't think that was an outlandish statement at the time, but I definitely do think that lately we've seen the cracks, and we've seen kind of a playbook form of how you can defeat V5 And it definitely is through the top lane where I think Rich has been kind of shown to be a little bit of a weakness. And I think JDG exploited that pretty well. And I think, all things considered, JDG, they've been dropping a good amount of games. They've been looking pretty shaky in a lot of series. Their only defeat is to FPX in what seemed like a pretty random game at the time, but that was when we were on. We kind of saw that the paths cross there for FPX to start performing well. But at the end of the day, I feel like they played Top Esports at the start of the year, before I think Top Esports really hit their stride. Like, I don't know. This one is really tough. Obviously, it is a very closely priced 50-50. I just can't find much to really differentiate these teams. The only difference maker here, I do think, is going to be that RNG are starting over on that blue side. We can look ahead. We can look at the sides here, and we'll see that they're not quite as pronounced. But RNG blue side 9-0, JDG 7-1, absolutely insane. Over on the red side, RNG 2-5, JDG 5-3. So we could definitely see how pronounced that these blue side red side splits are for these teams. Obviously, over on the blue side, both of these teams are pretty much indomitable. RNG 9-0, JDG 7-1. However, it only really gets bad for RNG. That would be the slight concern, is that I could definitely see, given that JDG are actually relatively decent over on the red side. A 5-3 record is not that bad when you consider everybody else pretty much has a negative red side record. And then over on the blue side, they're just as dominant as everybody else. So it seems like things are pretty much, a little bit better in their favor in that fashion. The problem is that the splits are still very pronounced. Like, obviously, JDG being a 7-1 blue side team and then 5-3 red, they're clearly better on blue. And then RNG 9-0 over on the blue side, and they have the blue side in game 1 and 3. Could JDG definitely take a game here and maybe take the series in a little bit of a surprise fashion? I definitely could see that. 369 has been playing like a very, very strong top laner, maybe the best top laner in the league in my opinion. I think this is going to be a very interesting clash, and one I definitely think you can make an argument to have both sides of. I wonder who's priced as the underdog. That could change things. I guess they're both about the same price. There's not much of a difference here, but I definitely think you could make an argument to go like either way here in this one. My slight lean is just towards the RNG side. I do feel like they've been getting things together a little bit more as of late. I think Gala versus Hope is going to be relatively one-sided to Gala. I do think Gala, again, we talked about him a second ago. I do think he is the best player in the world at the moment. I just think that's going to be the difference maker here. And although I feel like some of the RNG pieces around Gala have not quite been there, we've just seen enough inconsistencies, I think, from the JDG side that I'm not entirely sure that they'll be able to take one of those two red side games. Granted, the numbers do kind of dictate that maybe they're good enough to take one of them. I could definitely think, agree with that. However, I'm going to be looking at an RNG 2-1. I wonder what that is exactly. 245. That's not the best. I would say game 1 probably RNG, game 2 JDG. These numbers are already bet. People are already definitely aware of the blue side, red side stuff. So RNG is favored in map 1 and 2. Actually, not favored in map 3. That's kind of odd. But JDG favored map 2, RNG favored map 1. People are already aware of those blue side, red side splits. So you're not really getting much there. But yeah, my slight lean is just towards the RNG side. I think we've seen enough slight inconsistencies from JDG. However, I think this is one where you could definitely make an argument that you could look to game stack here for sure. So we have a couple of close LCK games that actually do have some relatively decent totals. We have DRX LSB at 24, T1 Gen G just at about 22-ish. RA EDG's at 25, and this one's nearing 27, which is a pretty insane marker. That's heavily put up by JDG, and obviously we've talked about before that when we're looking at these totals, I prefer to have the losing team have the higher numbers, because that means they're willing to go in and take these bad fights and feed a little bit more kills. And we know that RNG's upside, especially in the past, has been insane. We've seen plenty of RNG fiestas where they end up getting 25, 30 kills in a map, and it's just absolutely insane. So I'm willing to look at, I wonder what the total is in this one. That'd be a good look as well. So kill props, map 1, over under. Yeah, it's at about 27.5 already, so you're not getting much here. 27, yeah, it's at about 27 right now. I don't love this. I think maybe you could look at something like a sprinkle of over 31.5 at plus 200. Like I legit do think this is a pretty good like kind of fiesta upside, where we see just an absurd amount of kills. Like we could definitely see that just coming from like the RNG side in a game 1 victory, for example. So that's a way you could look at this. I do think it is game stackable. Again, very small sprinkle. These game stacks very rarely come in, but we've seen these type of games get out of hand quickly, and I could definitely see Gala and Hope picking up tons of kills and both being worth it. So yeah, my slightly lean towards the RNG side, and it should be a pretty fiesta one. I think RNG will be extremely heavily owned, and I will be right there with them as well. So that's it over in the LPL. I do think it is worth spending a good amount of time over in the LCK. These are two very, very closely priced games. We have Gen.G minus 130 over T1, and then DRX minus 120 over LSB. So I'm pretty excited for these games. These ones should be pretty fun to watch. The first one up is DRX versus Live Sandbox. So DRX coming off the defeat of Gen.G, but they took a 2-1 win over Damwon. Obviously, we know Damwon's not been playing greatly, and we saw that last night with the KT win that we ended up picking the KT underdog win over Damwon. So, skip the recap, but still get the little brownie points there. And Bro should have honestly had the 2-0. That was an absurd defeat that they took in game 2. But nonetheless, I'm surprised DRX are getting this much respect here. In all honesty, I think LSB probably is the better side of this one. I do think they should be a little bit. I think they should be getting the slight edge in terms of who the favorite should be. I know that they just lost out to a Nongshim in a relatively not good looking series, but I feel like that's says a little bit more about Nongshim than it does LSB. I think LSB are still kind of who we think they are in terms of a little bit over aggressive, put themselves in some bad spots when they kind of call themselves out of them. I don't know if DRX is quite good enough to do that. I think DRX has been shaky enough, and I think DRX is getting the nudge here because LSB lost to Nongshim. And I don't want to put too much stock into a team losing just their last series once. They were on quite a win streak before that. Obviously, we talked about this just a couple days ago when the LSB Nongshim series was going on, but LSB has only lost to the Elite 3, and I guess now that they've lost once to Nongshim as well. I just feel like LSB, they're quite aggressive. I think they're quite balanced, or they're not balanced. I do think they're aggressive. I think they're good. They before this Nongshim series, they only lost to T1 Gen.G Damwon. I think they're pretty good, and I'm surprised that the odds are the way they are here. I do think they're getting heavily dictated by the most previous match. I like the LSB side here a good bit. I think we're going to kind of zig where everyone is zagging. Well, I mean, I don't know what everyone else is doing. I don't, worry myself too much with that. But in my mind, I think people are going to overreact to the Nongshim LSB series a good bit. They might slide over to the DRX side, and I'm liking the LSB side. I don't want to overreact to their series out last time out. I like the team more so as a whole than the DRX side. I think DRX has been relatively shaky as of late. They just have a win over Dom 1, which obviously looks less impressive now. They have a 2-1 win over Bro that didn't look that impressive. They've obviously lost to Gen G and T1, not that big of a deal, but they had a KT roster defeat not too long ago. So I've just not been too impressed with DRX's gameplay. I think LSB is the better team. And I'm honestly a little bit surprised that the odds are going towards the DRX side. I would prefer the LSB side. They are pretty poorly priced on DK. I believe they are priced as the favorite here on DK, where there's the underdog odds wise. So maybe it's a good way to get a little bit unique. I think LSB could be a little bit overlooked in terms of the odds markets. We could see DRX is pretty underpriced on DK, so we could definitely see people go towards them. But I'm definitely willing to look and try to pair up like an LSB and a DRX. Obviously, Gala and Prince are two insanely great players, and their numbers are very fantastic as well. So that's definitely an avenue you could look at. And I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, the numbers say that this total is about 24 kills per game. I would agree with that. I do think this is going to be a relatively bloody series, so I'm definitely on board with trying to lock and load some LSB here. Again, and then over in the LCK, the last thing, the blue side advantage is there, but definitely not near as pronounced because over in the LCK, it doesn't work quite the same. They have whoever loses the game 1 picks the side for game 2. So either way, it kind of breaks down similarly, as it does in the LPL. However, the win rates are not quite as pronounced as they are over in the LPL. So yeah, LSB probably 2-1, maybe 2-0. Gen G T1. This one is pretty exciting. Obviously, we've been seeing a very, very, very strong performance out from Gen G as of late. They've lost three games the entire split. They are 25-3 map count record. They dropped 1 to Dom 1. They dropped 2 to T1. And they do have the rematch up with T1 here. It's going to be an exciting match. Obviously, I do think T1 are going to kind of bring it together here for this one. I do expect it to be a pretty exciting game. I think obviously my clear pick here is going to be Gen G. Obviously, you guys have known that I've been picking Gen G as the best team in the LCK for quite a bit. T1 have been looking pretty shaky as of late. I do feel like this is a tad bit of an obvious play. I do think a lot of people are going to have a similar outlook here to what I will be saying, which is I do think obviously Gen G have been very clean. They've been extremely clean. Their games have been looking extremely fantastic. They've been looking very dominant over everyone they've played. And T1 have been scraping by these games versus these lower end teams. And it just inspires very little confidence. Gen G minus 130, that's definitely a very palatable price tag. I think Gen G minus 1.5 at plus 225 is definitely very palatable as well. Although I don't love that quite as much because I do think T1 are going to bring something here and make this a little bit close. My mind just goes back to the first time that they played, and I do think Gen G kind of played a little bit better than T1 in the second game, and I do think Gen G were in a spot to get the sweep. They just kind of made one big mistake near the top side of the map, and they ended up losing like 2 or 3 kills, and then the Baron, and then T1 obviously when they have the Baron and a couple kills. When you give T1 a little bit, they will run with it. They are not that bad, obviously. I do think they are the number 2 team there in the LCK. They're good enough to do with the lead that you give them, enough. However, I just don't expect Gen G to make a similar style mistakes. I do like Gen G here. Probably 2-1, maybe 2-0. But yeah, I think T1 have been pretty shaky. I don't honestly quite love this one as much, both from an activity standpoint. I do think this is going to be a relatively slow game. I think although Gen G are really aggressive, I think T1's moniker of being aggressive seems a little bit over exaggerated. I believe the total for this one is set at about 22. We've actually seen T1 slow down as of late, and that's the main concern here. Is I don't know how much T1 are willing to throw down here. I'm going to be leaving this one off of my card at the moment. I do like Gen G. I just have a slight concern that like I feel like the T1 that shows up to these big marquee games is just a little bit different from the one that we see like every other match, and that is the concern. Um, I think there's a relatively decent case to make for the T1 underdog pick here because they beat them in the head-to-head last time. They didn't even look good going into that last one either. And again, I just have a feeling that T1 kind of show up for these big games a little bit differently. For that reason, I don't want to put the big stamp of approval on Gen G here. And that's just a slight concern. I do think it's going to be a close 2-1 series going either way. And I don't think there's a lot of action to justify the big price tags like on the Gen G side. And I don't have enough faith for the T1 side to kind of pick them either. So this is going to be kind of just a fade for me. Maybe look to the Gen G team slot a little bit here. But I don't even think they're that cheap. It's a 5.2. That's not that bad, but I don't love that much. So I think this T1 Gen G one will be just a fade for me. But, Gen G will be my pick. So we'll head over and we'll look at the players before we get out of here. Set the patches to 12-12 and 12-13. I do think we're going to be looking at some LSB. We will be looking at some EDG, and then we will be looking at some RNG. So I'm expecting some pretty big 80 carry numbers here. Actually, Xiaohu is eclipsing 80% kill participation now. His kill share is getting back up there over 20, so he's definitely somebody you could look to get in there. That's pretty exciting. Obviously, the grouping here is pretty insane. Viper, Junjia, Scout, Mako's numbers are not the best in context, but 67% is definitely enough. Obviously, for top laners, it seems like everyone but Breathe. I think both Dove and Flandre's numbers are good enough to justify there. Prince's numbers are actually kind of down there a little bit, although his kill share is still there. I do think if LSB win, it is going to be pretty heavily dictated through Prince. But we've definitely seen a pretty big, what's it called, resurgence from Closer. I think he's been looking extremely good lately. And he's somebody definitely I would like to get in. I do think something like a Xiaohu with a Xiaohu captain with Closer could be a pretty unique style build. Getting away from those double 80 carries could enable something pretty interesting. So I do think that's a pretty decent shout. But overall, again, EDG's numbers are pretty strong. Junji is at 70%. Viper, Scout, obviously JJ is not expected to be playing unless they lose a game and have to sub out their jungler, which is a slight concern, but, I'm not thinking about that too much. And then kill share wise, obviously Gala, Viper, Prince, all over 30, but Closer's even nearing 30 as well, so there's definitely options there. Again, I don't think the double mids, I think looking to get on a Xiaohu captain here is not that bad of a shout. Obviously, people have been knowing that Xiaohu's numbers have been a little bit low as of late. I do think they're coming up. Apologies, a little sneeze attack, but I do think Xiaohu's numbers are coming up as of late, so I do think this is like a little bit of a buy now spot. Obviously, the concern in this situation is that you would be leaving off your Gala captain, and his kill share is just insane. So that's the slight concern there. But if you are like making multiple lineups, I think getting a little bit different there makes sense for me. So. Yeah, I don't think there's too much really to talk about. I do think if you're stacking up, obviously Flandre and Dove would be the top laners I would prefer to go to, but everything else is about in line. I don't think there's anything too much different that you're looking at. Obviously, Viper's numbers are pretty insane there, so that's going to be it for me. I do think this is a pretty relatively straightforward slate for me and how I view these games. Obviously, I don't expect all three of these teams to go ahead and win. That would be nice. But these are all three, or RNG and LSB are both like slight pick'em games. Like there's not large favorites here. Mixing and matching them with EDG makes sense. Mixing and matching them together makes sense. I think fading an EDG here, hopefully, what you could do is just wholeheartedly fade EDG. It would be it would feel bad, but you could definitely see a world where EDG just mop the floor with RA and don't even score that much. We've seen that happen a few times lately, where these heavily one-sided games just get out of hand too quickly, and I could definitely see that happening. But I just think RA's numbers have been going up lately. They've been dying a good bit. They're at a 0.85 kills per minute, and as a losing team, that's a pretty decent number. So. Yeah, I do think there's a lot of good options here. Obviously, I don't quite love the LSB stuff. They are DRX's numbers are a little bit low. They're kind of heavily inflated by the average game time being high, and I don't love that. So I would prefer these LPL matchups. I think ranking them, I do think it is EDG, RNG, then LSB. However, I think all three of them would be very playable for me. And I do think Gen G, you could make an argument to mix a little bit in of, but I'm personally not going to be getting there. I just don't play that many lineups. I don't want to mix and match too much. So that will be it for me tonight. Sorry for the late video. Hopefully you guys managed to get something out of it, and I will see you guys all again tomorrow, similar time. Thank you guys.